Hi, my name is Emily Nordick, and I'm here to talk about monitoring for mite control effectiveness. Let's start with monitoring for mite drop during treatments. You do this alongside your miticides to assess whether mite fall is happening during your treatment. You start by inserting chemical treatment, and then you place either a sticky mat or core flute sprayed with a little layer of vegetable oil, and you place this on top of your solid bottom board or underneath the mesh under your ventilated bottom board. You leave these mats in for 3 to 5 days. You don't want to leave it in any longer than 5 days because a lot of debris can fall from the colony, and if too much debris builds up, it's hard to see the mites. Once you remove the mats, you check for mites. And always remember to complete the correct treatment duration. You don't want to take a miticide out too early or too late based on what the label states you should do. And I'd like to also mention that this is a nice thing to do during your treatment, but it's not absolutely essential. It can give you a kind of visualization of what's going on in your hive as the miticide knocks down mites. However, monitoring after any treatment is absolutely critical. So you want to conduct monitoring as soon as your treatment ends to see whether it worked. So you are basically checking your mite load afterwards to make sure that you are determining the effectiveness, and it'll tell you if you need to conduct further treatment. So if you're using chemicals, you want to make sure to use a chemical with a different mode of action for your next treatment. Always rotate your chemicals. And another thing to note is that even if you're not doing a chemical action, so for example, you're doing mechanical controls like caging your queen or drone brood trapping, you should still do monitoring after the end of that because it'll tell you whether that's working for you or not. So basically, if you're removing a treatment or you're removing a cage from your queen, or removing a drone comb, that's a good time to monitor for mites again to make sure any of those are working for you. So there are a few different methods that you can use to monitor for mite control effectiveness. The 3 most important and effective ones are the alcohol wash, soapy water wash, or your sugar shake. You can also put sticky mats or core flute in after your treatments, but they aren't going to determine your actual mite load, which will tell you whether you need to treat again or not. So it's really important to stick to those other 3 methods. I'd also like to note that an alcohol or soapy water wash is going to be more accurate in general than a sugar shake. There are just fewer variables that can decrease the mites being dislodged, essentially. So we do recommend that alcohol wash or soapy water wash will be most effective for you after your treatment. So let's talk about some potential treatment outcomes. So some of the positive possibilities are that your mite load is reduced, you have no ill effects on the bees or your hive products. If you really follow the label closely, that'll mitigate any risks of effects on the bees or your hive products. And you might also extend the time between your treatments. But some of the negative outcomes are that your mite load is not actually reduced. You might also have unanticipated impacts on the bees and or your hive products. Again, follow the label closely to mitigate these risks. You might also find that you need to retreat or shorten the treatment interval.
That's it.
So my mite load is still high after treatment. Why? Well, one reason is that there's a high environmental mite load, which causes reinfestation. The feral honeybee population or unmanaged colonies in your area can act as a reservoir for mites. And even if you've done a treatment, it's possible that your colonies can pick up mites from that reservoir population. So during this buildup phase, reinfestation is very common. So during the buildup phase, again, it's as varroa is spreading around and varroa isn't established and the population is quite unstable and unpredictable. So in future, as the mite stabilizes, we would see less reinfestation, but reinfestation is always possible. It's also possible that your treatment application was incorrect. So it's good to go back and review all of the steps that you took while you applied your treatment and compare it to the label. Make sure you didn't miss anything, and always rethink the next time you're going to make an application if it didn't work. It's also possible that mites are developing local resistance to the miticides. So over time, with back-to-back use of chemicals with the same mode of action, it's possible that the mites can become resistant to those chemicals. This has happened overseas, so it's an important thing to consider. So remember, if you need to retreat your hives, you always want to rotate your miticides. So 2 chemicals with the same mode of action and or in the same chemical class cannot be used sequentially. You want to rotate those out to decrease the chances of developing miticide resistance in your local varroa population.